Welcome to Resilient Minds 365, where we discuss the resilient stories of entrepreneurs, professionals, and students with mental illnesses to encourage you to strive, thrive, and live in abundance. I'm your host, Cleoni Crawford. Welcome to Resilient Minds 365, where we discuss the resilient stories of entrepreneurs, professionals, and students with mental illnesses to encourage you to strive, thrive, and live in abundance. I'm your host, Cleoni Crawford. Well, guys, welcome back. We are here with a special guest. We have Lauren Callahan. Who is Lauren Callahan? Well, she is a gut health expert, Ultrarunner, and Reiki master. She is the owner of Goddess Health and helps preparing menopausal athletes boost their energy and mood and reach peak health and performance, recover better, and ditch the bloat, belly fat. We all need that. Inflammation and endless injury for good. She's also the author of the book Couch to 50 Miles, an inspirational story of her healing journey from scarcity and survival to learning the power of nutrition, training, recovery, and inner peace. So with that said, I now present to you Lauren Callahan. So, Lauren, how are you doing this afternoon?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. This is really great.
Awesome. So, Lauren, tell us a little bit more about your profession, how you got started, what do you do, and just break it down for us.
Sure. So, actually, up until last year, I was a therapist. And I still have so much love for that world. But I did move into a holistic health space. So, I now am a coach with Goddess Health, and I help women. The nice way of saying this is that I help them improve their energy, mood, sleep, and recovery. And that's another way of saying that I help women who have shown up in this midlife space and they're like, what in the world is going on with me? I can't sleep. My mood is completely funky. I'm not a happy person. I have no energy. Certainly, we had a little laugh about the belly fat thing that shows up in midlife. And they're being told by their doctor that everything is normal, and they know that everything is not normal. And so I help these women through gut health and Reiki get to the source of the places in them that need healing and balance so that they can feel happy and get rest and have energy again and not get sick all the time and have a body that they love.
Cool. Sounds interesting. Cool. Thank you very much for sharing. So, how did you get started into that profession?
Yeah, so as I said, I was a therapist, right? And a little maybe something to know about therapists, and again, I still have so much love for this world, is that a lot of therapists show up in this profession as a way to heal themselves and possibly avoid what they're going through as well. And that doesn't mean that all that they do bad work. It's just as nice to know to be aware if that's what you're doing. And that absolutely was me. I kind of discovered, I say discovered, later in life, it really started to manifest in my life, like the trauma that I had experienced. And I had pretty much like blocked most of that out. And so it really became apparent in midlife. And so, I was immersed in this healing sort of world. And found a lot of healing through not only therapy but a lot of other different avenues that I'm always learning, right? Like I'm always a learner. But within that little side derail here, I was also a runner, and I loved running, and running actually was a huge part of my healing process.
Mhm.
um but in that process, I became very goal driven in that. And I really wanted to run a marathon. And actually, this sounds maybe a little bit like it has nothing to do with the story, but actually it has everything to do with it. I tried for 4 years to run a marathon and I just couldn't. Like I failed every single time. And it usually had something to do with like injury and inflammation, like having a hard time recovering. And so I tried everything. But then one day I started hearing a little bit about gut health
Mhm.
and how scientists are calling the gut, your second brain because it is related to everything, certainly your gastrointestinal health, but also, your energy, your mood, your sleep, your brain fog, right? Like your cognitive clarity, your immunity, right? It's related to everything. So I started getting curious, and I hear these stories about athletes who start improving their gut health, and all of a sudden they are not getting injured anymore. And I was like, oh yeah. So you're telling me that improving my gut health is going to help me like with my knee injuries and I'll be able to run a marathon. Yeah, I don't know about that, but I was curious, right? And certainly I was curious about my overall health. And I kept on having this question like, okay, I am a really healthy person, but what if my gut isn't healthy and it's not able to receive the good things that I'm giving it, like the good nutrition, all that, was not processing it. And I had to tell you, like, that was the best question that I ever could have asked myself, because I went on this journey. I tested my gut health. I found out exactly where it was at. I basically made an F, if we can give it a grade. And like Lauren Callahan doesn't make an F and be okay with that.
Mhm.
um, so I tested my gut health and I found out that it was really horrible. And so I did go on this path of improving my gut health. So, the wonderful end to the story for running a marathon was that I took like 5 or 6 months to improve my gut health. And yes, I went on to run a marathon. And then not only that, I ran a 50 miler, then I did an Ironman, then I did another 50 miler, then I did another Ironman, then I did a 50K, then I did a 100K, that's 62 miles, right? All within 1 year. So, I mean, I had this incredible, change athletically, but what I really want to highlight here is that along the way, I had all these moments where I was like, wait a minute, I don't have anxiety the way that I used to.
Wow.
Yeah, and that wasn't even, that wasn't something I did anything special, to try to stop, other than the normal things I've been doing, with therapy and all that. But I just didn't have it. And then, I'd have another day where I'd be like, oh my God, like I'm falling asleep at night now. Like I didn't even realize that it had become a problem. I had gotten to this place in life where I couldn't fall asleep. I would stay awake, and I would just think, well, I just need, more like therapy and need to, get this under control, or, and now that I improved my gut health, all of a sudden I was sleeping again. It was just like those problems went away almost. I mean, not like I never had anxiety, not like I never had a, difficult time going to sleep, but pretty much no, I didn't. The depression, it really eased for me, and other things as well. Certainly, like all of a sudden I wasn't getting sick anymore, the way that I used to. I had more energy. Yes, like I could tell inflammation was down. Like all of these wonderful things were happening. But the thing with my mood, that was huge, because I come from a background of trauma. And so for these kinds of things, anxiety and depression, to all of a sudden not be a thing, that was incredible for me. And so I guess circling back to your question, why am I doing what I'm doing now? It's because I loved doing what I was doing before, and I loved helping people, with their mental health. But I really began to feel like I'm missing the bigger picture here, and I want to help people on a bigger level with this.
Cool, cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you very much for sharing. So that's going to lead us right into the second part of our interview, which is the mental health part of the interview. So my question to you, you kind of alluded to the answer there, but what is your mental health diagnosis and when were you diagnosed?
Yeah, so uh Here's the caveat here is that I've never actually allowed myself to get diagnosed,
Okay.
but clearly, I like it is very clear that I have had a complex PTSD,
Mhm.
and that is related to emotional abuse and sexual abuse in my childhood. And then later on as an adult, I had an incredibly traumatic divorce, and I lost my children for a year and a half. I do want to throw in there that my ex and I now actually have a really beautiful co-parenting relationship. So a really great end to that story, as far as that goes. But absolutely hands down complex trauma. But I would never let myself get diagnosed. I had a part of me that was always very, very resistive to that. And for a number of different reasons why. But if I had allowed myself the diagnosis, that's definitely it.
Okay. And around what time would you say this did you discover that you were actually going through this?
So I would say in my early, I have a memory back as far as being 12 years old where I was completely and utterly depressed and had no idea why. And there was no adult in my life that I felt okay talking to about it. And then it just went away. And I
Hmm.
clearly remember that time at 12 years old. And it didn't last super long, it was just a couple days. But in my adult life, it began to become clear to me that I would have depressive episodes, and that I had maybe a little bit of anxiety. I would say that it was in my 30s when the anxiety showed up a lot more, the depression showed up a lot more, but I found plenty of ways to avoid it and to run from it. So, like in my book, Couch to 50 Miles, I mentioned that not only did I, separate from my first husband, but I went clear across the globe. Like I'm from, Louisiana in America, like, and I was living in Canada at the time, but I went to Bangladesh to leave my husband. So if ever, someone was running from something, it was definitely me. So again, I found lots of ways to avoid that. And I think it was, in my late 30s when I was truly getting my life back together. I came back from Bangladesh with $500 to my name and a half full suitcase, and I didn't have my kids. So I had pretty much hit absolute rock bottom. I was getting my life back together, and I began building a healthy life, and meeting healthy people and inviting healthy people into my life. But certainly that was an opportunity for things to come to light, such as depression, anxiety. I began having panic attacks, and it became clear to me that now here we are. You can't run from yourself. Wherever you go, there you are. And so as these things were coming to light, I was able to and address them in a very compassionate and healing way.
Okay. Okay. So tell us more about your mental health story of resilience. What did you have to go through? What did you overcome? How did you overcome? Um, how did you become who you are today? Break it down for us.
Yeah, sure. So when I came back from Bangladesh, again, kind of at that rock bottom sort of state, um, there were a few things that really needed some healing in my life. Certainly, there was the fact that I had never addressed the sexual abuse from my childhood. And I wouldn't say that I had completely blocked it out, but it was very much on like the periphery for me, like aware mostly that it was there. Trauma just has this weird way of like separating things in your mind, right? Um, and so I needed to address and heal that. Also, I brought many toxic habits with me into relationships, and I was continually seeking out another person um, that could maybe help me replay broken relationships from earlier in my life and repair them. And I was the only one that could do that. And so, and within that, if we were going to give, some more clinical labels to that, there was absolutely depressive episodes, anxiety, panic attacks that would show up all through that. Um, and maybe some unhealthy patterns in relationship that I was noticing now and able to work through. So as far as the healing aspect of that, I would say there were some pretty significant things along the way that were the building blocks for me. One was that I began doing yoga, and not only that, I did a yoga training. And it was in that training that I truly felt for the first time ever that it was okay to love myself. And I had never known that I didn't know that. I think if you would have asked me previously, I would have told you, sure, I love myself. It would have been words though. And so when I did this yoga training, it truly was the first time that I felt to the core of my being that I am good, that there is nothing wrong with me and I'm not broken, that I'm good. And then we all are that way. And anything else is just kind of like I don't know, shell on top of that maybe. And so I could trust in my own goodness, and I could trust that I could love myself and that I am loved by a higher power, by myself. So that was really huge. I would say another huge healing part of the journey was when I was in the therapy world, I was really drawn to a form of therapy called IFS, internal family systems. And
Mhm.
it sounds like a family therapy, but it's not. It can be used for that, but that's not the heart of it. The heart of it is the idea that within us, we have a self and we have different parts of us, and that is totally normal. As in, for example, I have a part of me that feels very motivated and wants to, go work out. And then I have another part of me that is sad as all get out and wants to sit on the couch. And that's normal. Like there's nothing pathological about that. We just have different parts, right? And we also have a self within us that is very harmonizing to these parts, that is naturally very healing to these parts. This was incredibly healing for me because it was the first. You remember I said I was very resistant to ever getting a diagnosis, and that's because I didn't want to be looked at as anything pathological in any way. Like I just, there was a part of me that couldn't handle that. And that was just my own need to like keep myself together. Right. Um, this form of therapy was so normalizing and so depathologizing that it could look at anybody with anything going on and say, that's normal. Like you've
Mhm.
got a part of you that, can't get out of bed. And then you also have a part of you that's ready to take on the world, and that's normal. And each of those parts needs from you a very compassionate presence, that you yourself are the healing energy for these parts. It's not like you need to fix them or figure them out or manage them or shame them into, getting out of the bed or like whatever. It's not that. You simply bringing your compassionate presence to these parts of you is in and of itself very, very healing. So learning, experiencing, being a part of this kind of therapy, again, was very, very healing to me, and really helped me to not be afraid of the parts of me that could remember the sexual abuse, that could remember, the emotional neglect, that could, remember the traumatic experiences that I had in Bangladesh and with divorce and all that. Instead, I could actually be very present with them and bring compassion to them, which was a naturally healing experience. Um, and then next on the journey would be gut health, right? And I learned a lot about the science behind that. Like serotonin is a gut metabolite, and 90% of it is produced in your gut, right? So if you don't have a healthy gut, you have a very uphill battle in your ability, like your physical ability to feel happy. So healing my gut was huge. And I would say finally on this path, and I'm still growing, obviously we're human beings and will always be growing, but I would say one of the most wonderful and thorough healing aspects that I've experienced is through Reiki. So Reiki is just an energy healing modality. It just uses energy to heal and balance at the source, and that's on a physical, mental, emotional level. It allows you to release whatever stored energy is within you that is not for your highest good. And my experience with Reiki is that I have experienced a freedom from depression and anxiety like I have never known. The edges of it have been smoothed. It does not take over me in the way that it used to.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Thank you so very much for sharing your journey of resilience. My next question to you is, what are 3 things you wish you had available when you were at your lowest point?
Yeah, so I wish that I had known that I wasn't crazy and that there was nothing wrong with me first. um, that if I had had a diagnosis, it would have been okay, right? Because it's like our mental health, that the whole like pathological way of thinking about it. That's not it, right? Like we are human beings with different parts of us that have experiences that need compassion and presence, right? So I wish I would have had that knowledge that you're not crazy, there's nothing wrong with you. I wish I also would have known about gut health. I grew up with a very not an eating disorder, but a disordered relationship with food. And so I set the stage for many, many years of poor gut health, which gave me an absolute uphill battle when it came to my mental health. And I just didn't know it until a couple of years ago. um, Certainly, I wish that I would have had Reiki. I had no idea the amount of stored energy within me, emotional, mental, traumatic kind of energy that was stored within my body that just simply needed to be released. So I'm more free to be me.
Cool. Those are 3 good points. I like that. And what words of hope would you give to our listeners, someone who's been through what you've gone through?
Yeah, goodness. And we talked about this before, and I'm kind of forgetting at that point, honestly, what I what I had told you. But what would I tell to someone who's going through something similar?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would tell them to address yourself very holistically, right? Just because you've gone to a doctor and they've said, yeah, everything's normal, or, maybe you've gone to a mental health professional about your mental health and have been prescribed like a certain kind of treatment plan, whether that is a certain kind of therapy or medication or whatever. Like all of those things can be very helpful, and we are also fuller, deeper human beings, right? Check your gut health, right? Like check and see what is going on there. Are you fighting an uphill battle that you don't need to fight, right? Embrace these holistic kind of complementary healing modalities like Reiki, right, that can help you release the stored energy within you that like manifests itself very physically and in our mental health and all of those things, right? Again, so that you're not having an uphill battle with your mental health.
Okay, that's good. So now we are going to do a little turn in the interview, changing the interview, where we're going to, you can see above, just above me, there's a book that says The Music of My Life. And basically what that is, it's a book that I wrote about music therapy and bipolar disorder. So my question to you is, what type of music do you like?
So yeah, I have a huge variety, and I love the context of that with music and bipolar disorder, and with what I was talking about a minute ago, like how I very much believe that we have different parts of us. So
Mhm.
I would say my music preferences are a reflection of this. So for example, I like a lot of different types of music. But if I am in a meditative space, I love like this pan flute kind of music that feels very meditative. If I am working out and not running or anything like that, strictly like strength training, I will listen to the kinds of music that my teenage boys would listen to, and I will listen to that in no other context, right? So like this, I don't even know what we call it, just what teenage kids are listening to these days. Like that's what I'll listen to when I'm working out, but at no other time, right? I also, in another, if it's a summer night, I would love to listen to like some like folk music, like folk guitar kind of music. So I have a lot of different styles.
Cool. So, if you were to think of a song that best describes your journey, what would it be and why?
Yeah, so Glorious by Macklemore. I love that song, and I love in
Oh,
particular the part where they say uh I I'm sorry, I'm gonna mess up the words a little bit, but I made it through the darkest part of the night and now I see the sunrise and I feel glorious. And I feel like that a lot.
that's amazing. I like that. I really like that.
Hmm.
Okay, so how can we stay in touch with you? What are your social media handles?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm Lauren B. Callahan. But you can also go to my website, goddesshealth.org. And one thing that you will find on that website, like if you're listening today and like really curious about gut health, maybe for the first time, you do have the opportunity on my website to get an individualized gut health kind of roadmap. So showing you where you are at, and then I help you walk through some steps of what you need to do to help improve your gut. So goddesshealth.org, you can go to my website and check out that individualized roadmap opportunity.
Perfect. Well, Lauren, it's been a pleasure having you as a guest on our show.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for sharing your story. And to all you resilient minds out there, until next time, please subscribe to us on all our platforms and don't forget to rate the show and leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts. Also, join the community of resilient minds and sign up for our monthly newsletter at cleonicrawford.com. Be sure to grab a copy of my book, The Music of My Life, on all Amazon marketplaces to get to know me better. And if you can think of one person that will receive value from today's show or connect with Lauren's testimonial, please share it with them. Feel free to take a screenshot of this week's episode of the podcast and tag us on Instagram. You can tag myself at Only Cleoni or Resilient Minds 365 and today's guest at Lauren B. Callahan on Instagram. And remember, mental health is not a death sentence. Despite your illness, you can strive, thrive, and live a life of abundance. Until next time, I'm Cleoni Crawford, and I'm signing off.